So we'll get started here, arriving on your mat physically and mentally. Starting to take those deep inhales and exhales. And just starting to slow down the breath. Starting to bring awareness into the breath. And part of that awareness is bringing your senses into the breath and into the body. So noticing how the cool air may be coming in and the warm air leaving the nose. Maybe noticing that spot at the tip of the nose where you can feel the inhale and the exhale. Feeling the expansion of the torso as you breathe in. So feeling that front half of the body moving away from the back, as well as the side bodies moving away from, or the left side moving away from the right side. And just continue these deep, slow breaths. So letting each breath grow bigger than the one before. So we're just starting to take the breath off of its autopilot here. Taking a few deep breaths. And we'll prepare the body to move. You can leave your eyes closed or just at a small gaze or a soft gaze in front of you. And with your next inhale, begin to sweep your arms around, slowly moving with breath. So reaching finally up to the sky, and then hands come together as they come into your heart center. And again, inhale to reach around and up, feeling the length on both sides of the body. Shoulders stay away from the ears, and hands on the exhalation come in toward your heart. One more time, reaching around and up. This time with your exhale, allow the left hand to come down to the earth and begin to hinge over to the left side, keeping both sit bones weighted evenly against the earth. Maybe feeling a deeper stretch here on the front of your hip or on the side body. And take big, expansive breaths into the right side of the body. So a nice point here to just really feel that breath even deeper. So we've changed the plane of the body slightly. If you want a little bit of movement for your neck, you can take your gaze down toward the earth and then eventually coming back up toward the ceiling. You can move back and forth or just find a nice place where it feels the best. And take 3 more deep breaths here. Notice whether you can soften that left shoulder. Maybe you can reach a little bit more overhead with that right hand. With your next inhale, coming back up to center, both hands reach up. And exhale, this time the right hand down to the earth, and we'll hinge over to this opposite side. Again, noticing places where you can soften in the body. Maybe that's the right shoulder, maybe that's the jaw, the forehead. Being mindful to keep the rib cage in So it's stacked over the pelvis. We're not thrusting the rib cage forward. And again, you have the option here to look down or take the gaze up towards the ceiling, finding that movement or stillness, whatever your body is asking. Feel the expansion. The breath is the movement here. Maybe you can find a little bit more depth to this pose by reaching the left hand even more overhead. One more full breath. And inhale to come back up to center. Both hands reach up. This time we'll take the left hand and bring the left hand to the top of the back, and the right hand comes to the elbow. Just gently. This is a place too where we tend to thrust the rib cage forward to get a deeper stretch in the shoulder. We want to keep that alignment and the rib cage down. So you can bring that hand there to check to make sure that the rib cage is flush with the abdominal wall. We don't need to go far here, just starting to stretch and get a little bit of movement into the shoulders. So just a gentle press with that right hand on the left shoulder. And if you would like, you can take this as a little bit of a side bend, just adding a slight side bend here as you move toward the right side. One full breath. And then if you are hinged over slightly, coming back to center, release that left hand and bring the left hand to the outside of the right thigh. And then the right hand comes back behind you, fingertips on the ground. Press into the fingertips on the ground so you find that long spine, reaching up through the crown of your head. With your exhale, begin to slightly twist open to the right side of the room. Notice that right shoulder and whether it's moving forward, that shoulder head is moving forward. And see if you can open the shoulder on the right side, maybe feeling a slight squeeze of the right shoulder blade against the spine. And then notice your left shoulder. Can you release your left shoulder? Moving it down. We don't want the shoulder up toward the ear. And maybe twisting open a little bit more. Wherever your chin is, keep it slightly down and back. So the palate is back, keeping length in the cervical spine. You can keep the chin over the sternum, or if you want a little bit deeper of a twist, you can take it over your right shoulder. Find length with your inhale and maybe a little bit more depth to the twist with your exhale. With your next in breath, begin to unwind, coming back to center and both arms reach up. This time the right elbow bends, the hand comes to the top of the back. Notice and watch the rib cage, and then the left hand comes to the top of the elbow. Just giving a little bit of stretch there. Deep breaths. We're still breathing into the belly in this pose. One more full breath here. And then gently begin to unwind. This time, the left hand comes behind you and that right hand comes to the outside of the left thigh. Press into that left hand, find a little bit more length and the sit bones against the earth, and then begin to twist with your exhalation. Open the collarbone. So feel that heart space opening as the left shoulder wraps back behind, hugging in toward the spine. Noticing the right shoulder, relaxing where you can, easing into the pose. And even though we're in a twist, we're still breathing into the belly. Think about lengthening up through the crown of the head and the spine with each inhale, and each exhale may take you a little bit deeper. One more deep breath here. And then using the inhale to find length in the spine, keeping that length begin to unwind, coming back to center. As you're ready, begin to make your way onto your hands and your knees. You can leave your toes tucked underneath you for a little bit more stability, or you can bring the lace side of the shoes or your feet down toward the earth. Wherever you are, keep your knees stacked underneath your hips, your wrists underneath your shoulders, and then press into all 10 pads of your fingers. You may feel the middle of your palm pop up a little bit, and that just ensures that we're keeping the pressure off of our wrists. So from this tabletop position, with your inhale, lift the tailbone up toward the ceiling, and exhale to round the tailbone towards your heels. And moving with your breath, inhale, lifting the tailbone up, and exhale to round the tailbone underneath. Noticing the movement here and noticing the ease of the movement. Relaxing the shoulders, keeping a small bend in the elbows. As you inhale, lifting the tailbone up toward the ceiling. This time, as you round your tailbone towards your heels, begin to take this curve into the entire spine, vertebra by vertebra. So starting with the tailbone, and then the low back, and then the mid back, and then the shoulders, and finally the chin comes down to the chest as the neck comes into the curve. And inhale to begin with your tailbone, lifting the tailbone up and beginning to flatten the rest of your spine. Low back, mid back, upper back, and neck. We'll take one more of those. So exhale to release the tailbone toward the heels and start to take this curve into the entire back. And eventually your inhale begins to straighten the back vertebra by vertebra. Beautiful. From this tabletop position, there's no rush. Taking or extending the left hand out to the side and up toward the ceiling and threading the needle. So that hand moves in between the space on the right side as you come down to the left shoulder. And you have a lot of options here on this for this right arm. You can keep it right underneath your shoulder. You can stretch it out in front of you, or you can come to a half bind by bringing the back of that right hand to the low back, or even grabbing the inside of the left thigh. The purpose and the intention of this pose is to really feel this stretch on the back of the shoulder. So if you don't feel this stretch underneath the shoulder blade on that left side, sit your hips back just a little bit more, stabilizing the hips and this slight twist. 5 breaths here. Using your breath to fill up the back of the body. Expanding, finding more space. Allow the mind to settle on the breath. If your mind is starting to take you into what's coming next or something else in your day or your week or the week behind us, a gentle reminder to bring it back into this breath. Feeling the breath moving through you, finding that tip of the nose where the inhale and the exhale both meet. If you have that right hand in that bind or reached out in front of you, begin to slide it back underneath the right shoulder so you can press into that right hand against the earth to help you unwind the left, bringing that left hand out to the side and up toward the ceiling and setting that hand back down to the earth. Shifting your or walking your hands forward to shift your hips forward into this like cobra pose. Stretching into the front of the hips, squeezing the shoulder blades on the back of the body, maybe rolling from side to side, exploring the body here. And always coming back to that breath. And with your next exhale, beginning to bow forward. So bringing the heart and the chest forward. And we'll move to that same left side. So from your belly, the left hand reaches out to the side of the mat, walking the hand a little bit further than you think, and then rolling on to the left side of the body. I'll switch around so you can see this a little bit better. But we're stretching the front of the shoulder. You can keep your legs stretched out in front of you, using that right hand to help support you. You can also bend both knees, stacking them on top of one another. That'll help protect your low back a little bit. If you want a deeper stretch, you can keep your legs out in front of you and bend that left knee, bringing the right foot behind the left leg. We'll be here for about 8 breaths. And you can play with this pose a little bit. And by playing or exploring, you can walk your fingers up a little bit. That'll change exactly where that stretch is. Or you can walk your fingers down. Just finding that Goldilocks position for you. Again, each pose is an invitation to reconnect with the breath. On our mats is similar to what happens off of our mats, where during these transition phases or these transition periods, sometimes we lose the focus of the breath. And then the poses themselves offer that time to reconnect and slow down the breath. Softening through the jaw, the forehead. One more breath here. And then as you're ready, rolling back onto your belly, the left hand comes underneath the shoulders and gently press yourself up to your hands and your knees and gently sitting back into a child's pose. Coming into this humble position, a nice pose where you can be, allowing yourself to come back into the breath, into the innermost part of your body. A check in here with your energy, with your body, with your thoughts, sensations. With your next exhale, begin to walk your hands over to the left side. Your hands can move off of the mat. This pose can be as active or passive as you would like. So you can reach that right hand out a little bit further than the left, getting a nice deep stretch on the side body. Taking 3 to 5 breaths here, depending on your breath pace. Notice how it feels as if the inhale is coming in through the body on the right side, and how the exhale is leaving the body on the right side. Feeling that expansion in the intercostal muscles on the right side of the body. And for these last couple breaths, see if you can sink the right side of the hips even deeper to get a bigger stretch on the right side of the body. As you come to your next inhale, remember there's no rush. Begin to walk your hands back to center and rising up onto your hands and your knees. Maybe take some hip circles here, moving your hips from side to side or rolling over the heels, whatever might feel best. You can take some stillness and just sink into one side, nourishing in that nice stretch, or you can move around if that feels better for you. We'll take about 3 breaths here. Find the rhythm of your breath in your body, matching the movement if you would like. If it doesn't match the movement, that's also okay. And then as you're ready, coming back up to your hands and your knees. And we're going to start that same sequence on the other side. So maybe here from this position, before we move on to the other side, noticing how the left side feels. With your next inhale, lifting the right hand out to the side and up toward the ceiling. And then finally threading that right hand through the space on the left side, coming to lay down on the back of the shoulder on the right side. Again, you have lots of options here with the left hand. It can stay exactly where it is with a 90-degree bend in the elbow. That's a perfect place to be. Or you can stretch that left hand out in front of you, or you can even take a bind. Anywhere is perfect if it is what your body needs today. Again, think about finding that stretch. So if you're not feeling it on the shoulder, sitting the hips back a little bit deeper. Notice the breath. The belly expands toward the earth and the back of the body lifts up toward the ceiling. Relaxing through the jaw, the forehead. And allow these moments to really relish in this nourishing breath. Slowing the breath down. Fill up the back of the body with breath, creating more space here. And beginning to slide that left hand back underneath the shoulder so you can press into the hand to breathe the right hand out to the right side and up toward the ceiling. Getting a nice stretch on the front of the shoulder before setting the hand back down to the earth. Walking the hands out in front of you, coming down to your belly. This time with this pose, we'll do a Sphinx pose. So bringing the forearms to the ground, about shoulder distance apart. Place the entire hand in the forearm, feel that connection at the earth. And then energetically slide the hands back as you slide the heart forward. Feel the squeeze of the shoulder blades down the back of the body. So the shoulders move away from the ears and the shoulder blades hug the spine. Taking 3 breaths here. As you fill up with breath, it's like your belly presses against the earth. And with your next exhale, bowing forward, coming onto your belly. Arms come to a T. And this time the right hand stretches out to the side, walking the fingertips a little bit further than you think, and finally rolling onto the right side of the body. Again, you can bend your knees, stacking them on top of one another. Your left hand can stay right underneath that left shoulder. The other option with the legs is to stretch them out in front of you. This time, the left knee bends, pointing up to the ceiling, and the left foot comes behind the right leg. Find your pose, walking your hands or your fingertips down or up and finding that Goldilocks position for you. Again, coming back to the breath. Slowing down the breath. Feeling this ebb and flow of breath moving through you. Take 2 more breaths here. And then as you are ready, rolling back onto your belly, sliding the right hand underneath the shoulder, and gently pressing yourself up on your inhale to hands and knees, and exhaling to sit back into that child's pose. Forehead to the earth, reconnecting with your breath. With your next exhale, this time the hands walk over to the right side of the mat or off of the mat. Again, your choice on how active or passive this pose is. You can walk your left hand a little bit more or higher than the right to get a deeper stretch on the left side of the body. This time, think about pressing your left hip down. Think about accentuating the crease in your left hip. Inhaling in through the left and exhaling out through the right side. Find more space at the depth of your lungs, feeling as if you're breathing all the way down into the hips. And then with your next inhale, coming back up to center or walking your hands to center, and then rising back up on your hands and your knees. Again, we'll take some hip circles or moving the hips from side to side. If you would rather take a cat and cow-like position, you can also do that. We're just resetting the body for a few breaths here. Starting to invite a little bit of movement in. Eventually, as you're ready, find your way onto your hands and your knees. And we'll start by, again, making sure that the rib cage is on the back of the body. So you can use your hand to do that, or if you can just feel that in your body as you make sure that the ribs are moving up. We'll start by lifting our right hand out in front of us and then lifting the left leg back behind us. So find the strength and the length of this pose. So we're reaching from the side of our body, from our belly button area, pressing into the earth with the left hand and the right knee, and hugging into the center from our from the inner arms and the inner thighs. Take one more breath here, and then bring the right hand down to the earth and bring the left foot down to the outside. So we're coming back into this kind of tabletop position with the leg out to the side. And what we're going to do here is press all four corners of the foot. So our whole foot is down onto the earth. We're not on the toe side of the foot. And then lift up through the inner thigh. So there's an engagement in the leg here. And with our exhale, we're going to start sending the hips back slightly. And then inhale to come back to center. Again, a really subtle movement. Keep pressing down through all four corners of the foot and lifting up through the thigh. Exhale to start to move the hips back. And then come back forward. And then bring the hips back again with your exhale. And we'll hold this for just 2 breaths. So keep breathing, keep the shoulders soft, the elbows are soft. Keep the jaw without tension. And inhale to come back up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to lift the left arm or the opposite arm, and we're going to start to move that underneath. So this is really important to keep the foot planted and lifting up through the thigh because that stabilizes our hip. So we're just going to bring the exhale, the hand through, reaching toward the right side or the left side, and then coming back up with the inhale and exhale to guide that hand through. Reaching from the shoulder blade as you move through. So just moving with your breath. We'll do it 2 more times for a total of 5. And then bringing the hand back down, sliding the knee in. And we'll take the hip over to that leg that was outstretched. We're going to move the hips over to that side. And you can stay here in stillness, just really getting a nice deep stretch on the side of the hips. Or I like to kind of move forward and backward, massaging into the hip. And coming back to center. So we'll do that same thing on the opposite side. So this time we're stretching the left hand out in front of us and the right leg back behind us. Finding that spinal balance, the rib cage is on the back of the body. We're reaching forward and backward from our center body. And at the same time, hugging in. So feel as if you're being pulled apart here. Someone might have your wrist and the other has your ankle, pressing into the earth through the grounded hand and the grounded knee to feel that buoyancy. And then taking a few deep breaths here, reconnecting with the breath. Now bringing the hand down to the earth, the toes can come to the earth and then slide out to the side. Moving into that same thing on the other side. So keeping that all 4 corners of that foot on the earth, lifting up through the inner thigh here. So we're hugging in, we're keeping that energy in the leg. And with your exhale, start to bring your hips back. And inhale to come forward. Shifting the hips back slightly with the exhale. Inhale to come forward. And on this third time, we're shifting the hips back and staying for 2 breaths. Lifting up through the inner thigh, grounding the foot onto the earth. And then coming forward. So finding that balance of the body. Your body is in the center. And this time the opposite arm lifts out to the side. And again, threading that through with the exhale. Feel as if you're reaching from back behind your shoulder blade. And inhale to come up. And exhale to thread through. And inhale to come up. Exhale, reaching through. And 2 more times with your own breath. And then the hand comes next to the other, knee slides in underneath, and we'll move this time to the right side, stretching out that hip. Nice work, ladies. Just taking a few deep breaths here. And coming back up to center and sitting back onto your heels. If you have a block that you want to use, go ahead and grab it. If you don't, you don't have to have it for this. It gives you a little bit more stability as we move into a lunge. But we'll start with our right foot forward. So what we're gonna do is walk our toes forward just slightly so that we can move deep into this lunge. And before we move deeper into this lunge, again, finding the four corners of the right foot, feeling an energetic shift of the right foot shifting back and the left knee shifting back, and then hugging into that center line. And then shifting forward until your Goldilocks position where you feel a nice stretch on the front of the hip. And we'll take 5 breaths there. Feel as if you're pressing down with that foot and the knee, thinking about rooting down through the foot and the knee, and then lifting up through the rest of the body and finding length. And finding the breath, that deep breath once again. You can close your eyes here. Follow the breath through your body, sending it to the depth of the lungs, finding the very bottom of the lungs and creating more space there. And then if you're forward, starting to shift back slightly, turn your left foot in. So it's right behind. I'll shift this way a little bit. So it's right here, no longer, no longer behind us, but shifted in toward the right side. And then the right elbow comes down to the thigh. Find that slight shift forward again. Inhale, the left arm reaches up for a modified side angle pose. Find the openness to this pose. So if you feel scrunched on this right side of your body, press into the forearm a little bit more so you have some lift. And then breathing again through the entire torso. So even here, we're feeling that 3-dimensional breath as the belly expands, so does the low back. The right side expanding away from the left side. Take one more deep breath here. And then unwinding. You can bring that left leg again straight back behind you. And we're gonna shift the hips back over that left heel to straighten the right leg. Here, if you have a prop, you can use that underneath the left hand. Or you can just bring your fingertips down to the earth and use that to help support you. Flex through the right foot, so the toes point up toward the ceiling and back behind, and then a shift of that right hip back. So we're squaring the hips, they're in alignment with each other. That also deepens the stretch on the back of the hamstring. So sometimes the low back can be tight because the hamstrings are tight. Think about moving both sit bones straight back behind you and match the sensation to the breath, meaning growing the breath bigger for this deep stretch. And notice where you're inviting tension in to avoid the pose. So maybe that's through the jaw. Maybe your thoughts are trying to take you into someplace else. Can you be here in this moment with this discomfort for 3 more deep breaths? After that third breath, starting to bring a bend back into that right knee. Walk the right foot off to the side of the mat, the toe slightly wider than your heel. Bring your hand into your thigh or to the top of the thigh and breathe and push it away, getting a nice stretch in the inside of the thigh. You can roll onto the outside, the pinky side toe of that right foot. Soften through your shoulders, jaw. And then start to walk the right foot back to center. And we'll actually walk that right foot all the way over to the left wrist to set up for a pigeon pose. So as we set up for this pigeon pose, the shin is as close to parallel as you can get it to the top of your mat. All of us are going to be different. Every day is going to be different depending on the openness of our hips. So as long as you're thinking about trying to get it parallel, that's where we want to be. And then again, just as we did in that lunge, we're going to engage through the legs and set up some boundaries there. So feeling energetically that shift of the right knee back and the left knee forward. It feels like you're coming out of the pose slightly, but we're just keeping that engagement or the integrity of the pose so that we get into the fascia of the muscles. So as you find that, then when you are ready, you can bow forward any amount using any props. If you want to bring a block or a pillow or anything to your forehead. And we'll be here for about 8 to 10 breaths. Notice and acknowledge what comes up for you in this pose. The hips are kind of like the train station of the body where there's a lot of coming and going. It's where we move from, it's where we change from, it's where we pivot from. So symbolically, the hips are a sign of change. Breathing into the muscle around the hip. Let that breath, that inner body support the outer body. Think about smoothing the breath out. Noticing what side of the breath might have compromised because of the pose and the intensity or the discomfort, the sensation. And see if you can smooth it out again. See if you can lengthen both sides out, finding those deep inhales and even deeper exhales. For the next few breaths, where can you soften? Maybe that's something physical like your jaw or your forehead, your shoulders. Maybe softening for you is staying present in this pose for just a few more breaths. As you are ready, you can press into your hands to help lift you up. And from here, you have two options. You can bring your left knee in, scooting it a little bit closer to your wrist so you can more easily unwind that right leg. You can take some hip circles in this hands and knees position, or you can move into a downward facing dog, pedaling out the feet, even lifting that hip and taking some circles from there. So whichever is calling for you today, and knowing that at any time you can switch that position. If hands and knees feels good, and then you want to take another couple breaths in a downward facing dog, please do that. You have about 5 breaths to move in any way that benefits your body. For this last breath, really feel that breath in the back of your body, feeling the full expansion, feeling the fullness of the breath. And then as you let go, feeling the softening, the surrendering, the stillness, and the emptiness of the breath. And slowly making your way to hands and knees if you're in that downward facing dog. And sitting back onto your heels, and we'll start with that left foot forward. Same thing on the left side. So find the foot and that connection to the earth. Find the shifting back from the left heel and the right knee forward. And then finding your edge here as you shift the hips forward, keeping the boundaries on the legs. Lifting up through the crown of the head and rooting down through the feet. So think about rooting down in order to rise up. And then your belly expands with the breath. Breathing so deeply that you feel that expansion on the top of the right hip. Maybe you feel a little bit softer here. Feeling the strength and the softness. With your next exhale, begin to shift the hips back over the right heel so that the left heel comes to the earth, the toes point up toward the ceiling. And again, there's that shifting back of the left hip to square those hips. Feel as if your sit bones are pressing back behind you. And if you have a prop, you can bring it underneath that right shoulder, or else just bring the fingertips to the earth. Deepen the breath. Find even parts, inhale and exhale. Match the breath to the sensation. Notice where you might be avoiding the pose rather than pushing against it, which brings more tension into the body. See if you can soften around it. Knowing that this pose is only temporary. Taking 2 more breaths here. And bending into the knee. I realized that I forgot that side angle pose. So we'll move there from here and then jump right back into that sequence. So the right foot comes to the left side. The left forearm comes to the thigh. Inhale the right arm up and begin to deepen the pose. Again, think about this pose as being pretty wide open. We're breathing and finding space in the front of the body, meaning that the back of the body is working. So there is a wrapping under sensation of that right glute. You might feel a stretch here as well as the side body all the way up this right side. But there's no collapsing in the left side. So if you feel a little bit collapsed here, press into the thigh with that right forearm to make a little bit more space. Keep reaching up, expand with your breath. And then unwind the pose so the hand can come back to a block or to the earth. And that left or that right leg comes straight back behind you. Now walk the left foot off to the side of the mat, toes a little bit wider than heels. Sink into this stretch and press the left hand either to the top of the thigh or to the inside and pressing it away from you, getting a nice stretch on the inner thigh. We're still breathing here, noticing whether the mind is starting to pull you away off of the mat and out of the body, and invite it gently to come back into the breath. Start to walk your foot back into center. And again, we're setting up for pigeon on this opposite side, on this left side. So the left ankle starts to walk toward the right wrist, setting the whole shin down, flexing through the left foot, so that'll protect the knee. And then again, finding as close to parallel as you can get it. So meeting with yourself where you are today. Finding that boundary, that integrity to the pose by sliding energetically the left knee back and the right knee forward so we're not sinking into the hips. And then as you are ready, bowing forward, your head can come to a prop or to the earth. Soften and surrender here. The doing part of this pose is your breath. The being is allowing yourself to be present in this moment, in this intensity or this discomfort, and surrendering to that. Growing the breath, smoothing out the breath. If that anchor point at the tip of your nose is helpful, finding that point there. feeling the expansion and the contraction, this ebb and flow. Really, this metronome in your body of the breath. Softening through the jaw, the forehead, shoulders relax. And just you and your breath here. Acknowledging, noticing what comes up. There's so much held in our body, emotions, experiences. And the body gives us clues, gives us information if we're paying attention. Take 2 more breaths, soften where you can, be present where you can. And then as you're ready, pressing into your hands to lift the torso up. And just as on the other side, you have 2 options. You can slide that right knee forward toward the wrist so you can unwind the left knee, coming into a hands and knees position, moving that hip out, or tucking the toes and coming into a downward facing dog and pedaling it out or taking some circles, whatever would feel best for your hip. Taking a few breaths to move here. And then if you're in downward facing dog, coming to your hands and your knees, and then starting to sit back over the heels and off to either side of the body, and bringing the legs out in front of you. So we'll start with the right leg extended and the left foot into the inner thigh. So we're on our sit bones. I like to press myself forward so that I'm not back leaning into my tailbone. I'm sitting up tall. And the right hand can come to the shin or to the thigh, whichever is more comfortable for you. Keep that right foot flexed. Inhale to lift the left arm up and start to hinge over the right leg. So it's like the left arm is reaching overhead to pick up the right toes. You might feel this stretch on the outside of the left side of the back. So right over like the SI joint. If you would like to take your right hand and grab your toes, you can also do that. But think about, it's like we're stacking the left rib cage over the right as we move into the side body stretch. With your next inhale, coming back up, we'll plant the left hand and come up onto the left knee and reach the right hand overhead. And then gently sit the left hip down, and we'll do that again. We're going to do it 3 times. So the right hand comes to the shin, gently start to hinge over the foot or over the leg. And then inhale to come up, plant the left hand and lift yourself up. Take an in breath here. Exhale to sit the hip down. We'll do that one more time. Right hand comes to the shin. Inhale, arm up, and exhale to hinge over. Take one breath. And then inhale to come back up. Plant the hand and reach the hand back behind. And sitting the hips back down. Moving to the other side. So this time the left leg extends. Right foot comes into the inner thigh, flexing through that left foot, sitting up onto the sit bones. Left hand comes to the shin, reaching the right hand up and hinging over. So this first time we're gonna hold it a little bit. Feeling the breath here in this static pose. Breathing to the sensation wherever that may be. It may be a little bit deeper of a stretch up higher or up down lower. You're still doing the pose right. With your next inhale, coming back up to center, plant the hand, come on to the right knee, the left hand sweeps behind. And coming back to the hip, moving with your own breath 2 more times. Find the rhythm of your breath and your body. Beautiful. And as you finish up, there's never any rush. You can bring both soles of your feet together out in front of you for seated Baddha Konasana. Again, sitting on your sit bone. So feeling like the pubic bone is tilted forward. This may be a perfect place to stay here depending on your hip flexibility. So you can stay right here, or if you want to bow forward any amount, you can do that, stretching or inviting that stretch into the low back. Think about reaching through the crown of your head on the inhale and exhaling to go a little bit deeper. Three more breaths. And with your inhalation, coming back up to center. You can grab the outsides of your legs with your hands to bring the knees back together. And gently, vertebra by vertebra, starting to roll down onto your back. Bringing the knees into the chest, maybe rocking from side to side, or taking some circles around the tailbone. And then taking a happy baby. So either your peace fingers can grab your big toes, or your hands can come to the bottom of your soles of your feet. The knees move to the outside of the elbows and to the shoulders. Press the tailbone down toward the earth. Feel your knees moving down toward the earth, but your feet pressing up toward the ceiling. Find length through the cervical spine by taking your chin down slightly. So we don't want the chin moving up toward the ceiling. We want that chin tucked down or finding that palate back to find the alignment in the neck. You can rock from side to side here, finding a little bit of movement. And then releasing that, taking the knees back to the chest and bringing the knees over to the right side. Arms come to a T, and you can take your gaze over the left shoulder. There's variations that you can take with your legs. You can come into more of an eagle-like position to get a deeper stretch. You can also take those knees out to a 90-90-90 to get more of a stretch on the front of the hip into the hip flexor and the psoas. So take whatever variation works for you today. And we'll take about 5 breaths on each side. On your next inhale, coming back to center. And with your exhale, taking it over to the opposite side. Knees move to the left in whatever variation you choose. And the gaze can look over the right shoulder. With your next inhale, coming back to center, stretching the legs out in front of you and the arms back behind you for one last big full body stretch. And eventually bringing the hands down to your side, taking up as much space as you can here. And then settling into this stillness that we have worked all of practice for or towards. Starting to let go of the focus on the breath. And starting to come to the being part of practice. Shavasana. You are like water, soft enough to bloom the flowers, strong enough to break the mountains. Don't underestimate your strength. You are like water, soft enough to bloom the flowers, strong enough to break the mountains. Don't underestimate your strength. Start to bring the awareness of breath back into your body, filling up completely, noticing that fullness of your breath. And as you empty out, noticing the bottom of your breath at its very emptiest. Starting to bring movement into your fingers and your toes, maybe wiggling or rolling through your ankles and your wrists, maybe even moving your head from side to side. And as you're ready, rolling onto either side of your body into a nurturing or a fetal position. And taking a few big breaths here with this newborn awareness. Using the strength of your arms, pressing yourself up to a seat at the top of your mat. Your eyes can stay closed or at a soft gaze in front of you. And bringing both hands together in front of your heart center, allowing your thumbs to touch your chest, your heart, or your sternum. And these hands are an extension of you, of your heart, bowing your head towards yourself to acknowledge your practice today for taking this time for you. The light within me honors and recognizes the light, strength, beauty, and mother in all of you. Namaste.